My name's Kevin Bates. I am a VP of Enterprise Data Strategy Execution at Fannie Mae. I started studying biochemistry as an undergrad at Texas A&M University. I grew up in Texas my whole life. From there, I got interested in the computational models that were being developed at that time to do calculations related to chemical, reactions and things like that. And so I joined a lab of Dr. Gustavo Scusaria at Rice University after I was done in college, and I was doing computational work, writing computer programs to do large-scale calculations. So that was my scholastic training. And as I entered the workforce, I was looking for opportunities to apply my scientific background, my programming background, and find a job. And so over the course of the years, I started off taking basic programming jobs, doing Java and Unix scripting and things like that. And over time, as I gained experience, I also found opportunities to bring back sort of this scientific foundations that I'd had, even up to this day. So as I continued in my career, the trends around data and how data can be leveraged to make an organization more successful, give them new insights on their business and that sort of thing. Over the years, I have advanced in my career by moving from one opportunity on a large strategic initiative for the firm and delivering some results, and then moving on to the next one. At Fannie Mae, where I am currently working, I've been able to move through a series of projects that really led to a need identified by the company to establish a foundational footprint of the data at the firm and to standardize and aggregate that data in a centralized platform. That was a big initiative that required alignment to many other initiatives. It also required a focus on data governance and other things, but to bring that to life in a centralized data integration platform that would enable the company to then use their data much more effectively because it's in one place. You've called everything by its proper name, you've standardized, you've developed a common architecture for all of those things that will now enable analytics and lines of business to take action on that data in real time versus the way they used to do it, where they would wait for monthly updates of data to come through, and they had to wait a full 6 weeks often to see the latest version of business data. Now we're delivering that in near real time using these techniques to enable analytics. I'd say that the tools that Fannie Mae is using to further their data analytics and data exploration capabilities are very similar to the tools used throughout other industries, healthcare, across finance, which of course we're part of, risk management, insurance, and so forth. It's how you apply the tools, and it's the data domain, the business acumen that you can apply that really helps you bring the value out of the data. You have to know what questions you're trying to ask and what the answers mean to you. But the toolkit is very common. When we started building out this centralized data platform, we were using very standard tools on premises, the Oracles, the Netezas. These are large-scale systems. But over the last year, we have been migrating toward use of the enterprise data lake out in the cloud. So we're starting to build cloud-based assets in our business and in our data operations to enable new applications, new tools that are cloud-based, while we still are maintaining our data centers and our on-premises footprint for data at Fannie Mae. So we have a hybrid model right now, but the direction is definitely in moving toward use of AWS, S3 for storage, EMR for computational capability, and what that enables for us is, multiple things. One is over time, we would like to get out of the business of running our own data centers. That is a huge distraction, and that's not a core competitive capability for Fannie Mae. That's really just something that we're doing because we have to. So over time, we want to move to the cloud, partly for that reason. Also for the tremendous scalability that's offered by moving to cloud-based assets. So we're not all in. This will be a multi-year journey to get that done. But we are taking those early steps now, and so over the next year or so, I expect us to bring in multiple new tools that help us do that migration, help us work on our data both on premises and in the cloud, some new tools that help bridge the gaps between our governance model for the standard kinds of data operations that we're running and the new and different governance model that you'll have when you're moving data into a cloud base. The biggest challenge with cloud adoption, and especially moving to the public cloud, has been around security and working with our Chief Information Security Officer to address concerns he may have, specifically because you're moving data back and forth between Fannie Mae and another corporation. We found that in terms of access control and how you make sure that only the right people can see your data, that all of those tools exist on the Amazon stack the same way they exist on premises, but they're different. And the biggest challenge with that is obviously getting approval to use the new tools and explaining how it's going to work in this new world versus how it works today. But it's also building a sustainable capability to manage that. So it's one thing to have a couple really smart guys go figure out how this will work and give a nice PowerPoint presentation to the CISO around how you're going to move to the cloud. It's another thing to have an enabling, sustainable group of people supporting that and making sure that it becomes part of the DNA of how your IT organization runs. We don't want to have situations where we really just had big holes in our operational run books so that when we move things to the cloud, we end up having essentially a breach or having showing private information to the wrong people, and that's so it's not so much the existence of the tools and the capabilities, it's more the organization's adoption and maturity around using those tools. When I look at the next 12 months, what I am focused on in my organization is taking the early steps that we've made into having cloud-based data delivery and expanding that and repeating that and building a more sustainable support model around doing that. That actually will require new tools because we're finding as we try to scale up that operation that you don't necessarily want to have a bunch of Python programmers and just continue to build a large Python development organization for movement of data. There are other tools that we're probably going to need. One good example is where we need to create what we would call a foundation or an ecosystem of sharing data that incorporates both on-prem assets and the data that we have and we'll probably have for many more years based in repositories on premises, and the data that we're moving into the cloud so that we can give a unified view to our analytics consumers who want all of the data. That's going to be necessary for any organization that's doing a migration from on-premises data centers into the cloud. You're going to have them coexisting for some period of time, and you're going to need new tools that help you address that. You're going to need to think about your reporting tools if you're a Tableau user or a SAS user or a Spotfire user. Those tools are going to be potentially applicable to the cloud, but you're going to need a different licensing model, and you'll have to think about the overall cost of that. I would also say that the way that you build a solution is changing in that today, when folks build systems on top of an Oracle database, they've developed over many years a way of building those systems to make them operate efficiently, to give them good performance. Moving to the cloud, you have to rethink all of that. The engineering behind it will be different, and that requires a different way of thinking in terms of building a solution that is appropriate for the infrastructure that you're going to push the solution to. You don't want it to be, I built it this way, I'm just lifting and shifting it to the cloud, or you'll have all kinds of problems. So other aspects of performance tuning design will be things that we really have to nail in the next year if we're going to be successful doing this. And another final thought I would add on that is that we see right now across the industry really an explosion of tools that are being made available, where most organizations need to move away from trying to govern the tools you're allowed to use to more of a fit-for-purpose tool selection process where folks can adopt new tools as they wish. They need to do it in a sustainable way and limited cost, but we can no longer be doing 2 and 3 year projects because 6 months into a project you'll identify a new tool that helps you get somewhere faster or better than what you had originally thought. And so you have to be agile and nimble and sort of move your way. That is tied to the cloud adoption because these tools are largely proliferating in the cloud and then influencing the solutions that you build there. Primarily, we are focused on data aggregation in the cloud right now, so bringing in third-party data sets is a great example. That data is already external to the company, so it makes sense that you're not really adding additional risk by hosting it in the cloud. But what you've allowed is collaboration on third-party data sets across the firm versus having just one line of business bring it in a somewhat siloed way. Enabling the cloud is more than just landing data in the storage. It also includes analytics being performed on the data where you're going to need computational capabilities in the cloud. You need to think through how that's going to work, what the cost of that will be. You have to think about connecting the data in the cloud to the data and applications that are on premises. So there's middleware involved in the movement of the data. And we talked a little bit earlier about information security challenges. A lot of that transport of data back and forth has to be run through your CISO. It has to be run through your enterprise architecture teams. You have to make sure that you have the right design for that kind of data sharing and data movement. I get out of bed every morning and go to work excited to drive the charge through another day. It is exciting to work with new technologies and to do projects that people have never done before. So if you work for a well-established company, and you're on a project to move their data platforms to the cloud or key business applications to the cloud or their analytics practice to the cloud, no one's ever done that before. So that involves a set of challenges that are not only engineering, but cultural challenges within your own company, how to think differently about data, how to think differently about the solutions we're deploying, and the teamwork that's involved to make that happen. I mentioned earlier the need to be agile and nimble and reevaluate the direction you're going every 3 to 6 months. I happen to be a technologist. For a technologist, that's a dream come true because in the past you would get on these long projects with a fixed date and a fixed budget, and you really just had to focus on delivering by that date at that budget. And you may have had great ideas and different directions you thought would be good to go, and that really wasn't an option. Nowadays, you have to be agile, nimble, and willing to reevaluate your direction because the tools are changing, the environment's changing, the cost models are changing, and that impacts everyone. So it's an exciting time to be delivering solutions because there's so many new aspects of that work that it can be reinvigorating for somebody like me with 20 years of experience. Fannie Mae, we've identified the need to be competitive with any other company on Wall Street or across the globe. And one thing that's very clear is that data is the blood of the company. It is the juice that makes everything else happen. So it was identified a few years ago by existing leadership, folks that have never done this before, but looking at the industry and seeing where things were headed, knowing that our own fate is somewhat tied to our ability to compete. As a government-sponsored enterprise, we've enjoyed advantages in the past that we may not enjoy in the future. And to compete on our own 2 feet means that our ability to transform our systems, to streamline our operations, to leverage our data in a way that allows us to make insights as quick or quicker than our competition will be critical. And so we've taken over the last 5 years a pretty aggressive stance on driving change, trying to be the strongest partner we can be to the servicing industry and the mortgage industry that relies on us. So the new technologies, moving to the cloud, all of that is done with the intent of making sure we don't miss opportunities to develop, to transform our systems, to streamline, to find the lowest cost models, to be in the right place at the right time as technologies change. One of the toughest lessons learned for me has been the need to focus and refocus and continually bring up cultural change and bringing groups along with you. When you're on this ride, driving change, building new systems with new tools, thinking about data in a different way than you've done in the past, it's easy to get focused in on what you're doing in your tempest in a teapot, if you will, and recognizing that data is something that impacts everyone. It's very important for you to bring all of the consumers of the data within your company along on that journey and share status as you go, over communicate to them what's happening, why it's happening, the direction you're headed. because you have a large number of people in the finance division that are trying to close the books every month, a large number of people in the enterprise risk division that consume data to manage our risk and keep tabs on where we are in terms of as an organization, and many other partners throughout the company that really are concerned about the rate of change. So on the one hand, we're driving change, we're being asked to push change and to go faster. But on the other hand, many other organizations are not quite ready for that. And not only do you need to work on establishing a culture that accepts change, but you actually have to work on the engineering across those groups as well to make sure that they can absorb the change that we're pushing. So this has been a great lesson for me as I've gone through this process. And often a few years into the program, it's only when they see, these organizations see the progress you're making and that this is really happening, that you start to hear the reaction. And it could often be fear or concern for the right reasons, which is that they run an important business process and they haven't thought about how they're going to manage with having monthly changes in how their data is flowing into them. So this has been a great lesson for me, and it's something that will be a work in progress.